Could you talk about Martini and Rameau? Because
Yes, this
that's
is
a
an important
very,
question.
very
This is
important question.
there is some literature on it, on this argument. But in principle, when the Rameau theories of fundamental base of the inversion of chords arrived to Italy, and the first most important follower of these theories was Padre Vallotti, also Franciscan in Padua. So Padua is 1 hour from Bologna now, so 100, 111, 110 kilometers. And Martini was reacting bad. Martini was not interested, like every learned and practical musician, to the Rameau system. There is a Bach document. I love Rameau as composer, of course, but Rameau didn't compose after his harmonic theories. He composed after the basso continuo system. Then I know that there was a polemic about my words in the last first interview. We'll speak a little bit about it, but I'm a completely liberal person, not so, are different ways to see, you could tell me, the same phenomenon. But it's not really so simple. There is a Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach document where he wrote, I think, to Forkel, if I remember. Me, I, and my father, as every good musician, are against Rameau. So what means against the theory of traité d'harmonie réduit à ses principes naturels. Not against Rameau. Bach was influenced, of course, by Rameau, les sons, les suites pour les clavecins. Maybe the partitas are also an answer not only to Scarlatti, very brilliant keyboard style, but also to Rameau. So but the system, the interpretation of the musical world, musical system, like I call with my students, and I'm very happy to teach practical music because I'm also a musicologist. I know very good musicology, and maybe I'm musicology, but the musicology for me has sense when this helps to understand better music that is, first of all, a practical phenomenon. But in any case, Rameau make Jews naturalism. How is in English? Jews
natural science, something like that.
In philosophy, Jews naturalism moment because it's a discipline. But this is I check.
Yeah.
This is very important. But maybe yes, doctrine of natural law. Yes. In harmony. So this is a theoretical thing. There is a triad composed by 2/3, and from this triad with a third, minor, major, and a fifth, you can inverse everything, and you will have everything in the language of common practice. This may be true, of course, but the sense of it is a theoretical one, is to find a rational, typical French, the French encyclopedic mentality, rationalist, to find a law in order to understand phenomena. But these are very few to do with a musician at the keyboard who has to compose an opera in 10 days. So what is important to learn, and we know from Partimento practice, Partimento studies now, very it's a fashion now to make Partimento. and so what we know that they studied at the keyboard, and this until later, until 1930, 1940. And then classical musicians didn't do anymore, but jazz musicians do it. Organist has to do it. Organist maintains more tonality, maybe. Also in the Protestant in England, there is not strange to compose neo-tonal, or in Scandinavia, in the Central European world after avant-garde. After Stravinsky, but after Schoenberg, after the 12-tone music, is very after develops of it, is very difficult. I compose in a neo-tonal language that is maybe the same language Ulrich, Satie, Debussy, Ravel, Bartok, the first Bartok. Fauré was the first Mussorgsky, but also the jazz language is this. Keith Jarrett, one of the biggest genius. The clavichord CDs of Keith Jarrett are between the best recordings never heard in my life. The Book of Waves, I suggest to listen to Book of Waves on the clavichord, on 2 or 3 clavichords also together, are improvisation in every possible way, also in Bach, in Louis Couperin, in French Baroque way, in a neo-Indian way, in American. I'm not an expert of music, popular music, but so what happens? We know if there is a number, a figure, we have 5, 6. In that moment, we know that the bass must make a ascending stepwise motion of 1 degree. We have 4 sharp, barred 4. We know that the bass make a descending step motion. We have 7. The bass has to jump a 5th down. We have so when, and so the of course there was in Facebook you showed me a polemic against my words. There is a functionality. I appreciate a lot at university. I studied the functional harmony at university, and this was an harmony much more interesting, I think, that the degrees harmony of the French school, because there is a function of tonic, dominant, subdominant, dominant. 3 functions, but there are still the figures of continuo in these 3 functions. So there is the parallel of the tonic, the parallel of the subdominant, but all these, like the Rameau system, because this is a consequence of Rameau system, of inversion of a triad, is very fascinating, but is theoretical, is analytical. I think after 12-tone music, there is it's very important to study music analysis, because when you arrive to a system so maybe was impossible to be better than Brahms, no? And there is a search for new patterns, new influences. So the neo-Gregorian fashion of Solesme created some in France a new language, model language, but much more. And this Coquelin explains very good this very good composer and also very bizarre man, and also incredible writer of method of composition, counterpoint, harmony, of everything, and of orchestration. Coquelin tells us that Fauré was influenced in the modality, the neo-modality, by the Gregorian chant, but also by the Mussorgsky, the Russian modality in Western Europe. The bipolarity between extreme West France and between extreme East Russia, no? And of course, this neo-modal language I like a lot when I improvise for myself, not in historical style. Maybe we listen something of this fruit, but I love the diatonic Shostakovich, for example, the diatonic things by Shostakovich, by Stravinsky, the diatonic style, the pandiatonic. Pandiatonic is a consequence of traditions, popular tradition, folk tradition, and of Gregorian Solesme singing. But of course, the Rameau system is theoretical. In France, in this beautiful book I have here in original copy, that this is a traité, Panseron, student of Padre Mattei, a friend of Rossini, professor of harmonie pratique at the Paris Conservatory. Harmonie pratique. So what happens in this incredible book? You can find online. The first part is all Rameau system of harmony. So the triads, the inversions, the degrees. Then the second part, there are the exercices d'harmonie pratique au piano. At the keyboard, you play the partimentos, the basses, he called basses, and there is Fenaroli, Cotumacci, Leo, Mattei, and with numbers, and realized in a more academic 19th century way. So which is 3 against 1, no? 3. The scoring is 4-part scoring normally, sometimes out of 3 parts, but rigorously always 4 or always 3. And this is a consequence of the general bass system of the Germans, of the French. Italians were not so coherent, so rigorous. They used normally 2 parts, like in my Saratelli, or 3 parts. Also, Padre Mattei, there are some. We published, me and my friend Peter Van Tua published this little book in Sweden. He prepared the edition. I wrote the preface, but I suggest to give to publish also 3 realizations, maybe made by Mattei himself, of his partimentos, and they are rigorously in 2 violins and bass. So the right hand is like my Saratelli, not so florid, so diminished, a little bit more standing, more vocal, but very high. Also, I don't find my copy here. Maybe it's in Venice in my conservatory, but are the little basses by Mattei with my preface about Partimento stuff things and Bolognese school of Partimento with some interesting, I think, informations. But in any case, what happened? We have in Panseron really many important things. Panseron tells how to learn to do a good partimento. Bass, it's called the same. Look to Bach. Learn by memory all Bach fugues and preludes and fugues. Learn Handel music, Scarlatti keyboard music. He tells in romantic age. Learn Kramer studies and Kramer music. Learn Clementi Gradus ad Parnasso with beautiful canons and fugues. Learn Kozeluk. Learn Kalkbrenner. Learn Liszt. And he tells, I was reading...
Liszt? Okay.
remember that Liszt, Kalkbrenner, Chopin all know Bach Handel perfectly. If not, they are not Liszt and so imitation of models, and this is, of course, the most important thing in everything, from a child with parent, but in music, the imitation of models, and so it tells in order to do good Cotumacci, Leo, Fenaroli, look at Bach. So maybe my Martini, also my Sarata in some way. There are movements of right hands I have unconsciously taken by my practice with Bach music since I was 4 years. But of course, I could write also in a more Italian, so more simple way, no? But Panseron tells the same. So there is a transnational language, no? of keyboard style, but keyboard style is one of the styles. The goal is to write for orchestra, for voices, a mass, for church, an opera, or a big mass. So we spoke about it many times. Why to stop to organ composition? I'm professor for organ and organ composition because in Italy, in my school days, was obligatory in organ to write counterpoint in post-Fuchs system. So with cantus firmus in the highest part, in the lowest part, in 3 parts. Contrapunct for us organists was enough in 3 parts, not in 4. Composers in 4 and also 8 for us organists in 3 parts. Then in the next exam, we had to compose a 2-part fuguetta, not a fugue, a big fugue, a fuguetta for keyboard, for organ. And in the final exam, we had to compose a 3-part fuguetta for organ and a motet for voice and organ. And of course, to accompany Gregorian chant and to read at first sight open score in 4 class, to modulate, to make a first sight reading of with pedal and other things. But the composition, and this was the minimum that our Sicilian organists, so Bossi, Ravanello, Tebaldini, decided for a church organist was important to do. And so now there is, and this is very dangerous, in all Europe, we taken also in Italy the Hochschule system, the European system, so Anglo-Saxon system, and the composition part that every organist has to do is not anymore made by the organ professor. There is a separation, typical modern separation of competencies in hyper competencies. But now most of professor composition in Europe are post-avant-garde composers.
Post avant-garde, not even avant-garde.
Post the 12-tone system. So there are so many styles and so many influence currents. So I'm not expert of it, but they don't know really how to teach to write a correct, a nice 4-part or 3-part fugue or a double choir, a motet, or also a quartet could be a problem. So if you because this is academic exercise, and this could be an academic exercise, but it's a fantasy developed exercise, no? And so and it's a technique exercise. In order to be good in something, you have to have technique. No? Also to cook, no? There is a technique, and the technique is important in order to develop the capacity to express yourself, no? in every language. So what happens in my case? I started as organ and organ composition professor in 2002, and now I'm professor for organ because it changed the system in Italy. But in Bergamo, in Genova, and in Venice, I asked to the rectors to teach myself the organ composition, not the
post
principle.
avant-garde.
But no, they are very good, and then there are exceptions, of course, always. But what happens that after the destruction of tonals of common practice language and didactic, so there are methods in the organ late 19th century Italian organ world, organ composition method made by organists that are completed. They use partimentos taken from Bach music. And the model of fugue teaching is not the Bolognese school or Naples school together mixed, result in what? In Cherubini. Cherubini was student of Sarti. Sarti was student of Martini and Vallotti. So there is a tradition of the Italian vocal fugue teaching from Bologna school to Cherubini, from Cherubini to Dubois, from Dubois to Gedalge, as it the school fugue of Paris. No? We did a much more interesting, I find, keyboard fuguetta that is where everything is possible, like in Bach. In Bach there is freedom. Bach uses counter subject when he needs. Very often, mostly keyboard fugue by Bach, there is no the same counter subject every time. So this is a completely another is instrumental fugue, but also Padre Martini in the Padre Paolucci treatise, l'arte pratica di contrappunto. Martini wrote the contrapunto treatise because he was a little bit angry that every lessons by him to Paolucci became a book before. So Martini, the same happened with Gradus ad Parnassum with Clementi. Clementi wrote the Gradus ad Parnassum very angry with his student Kramer, because Kramer wrote the 100 studies before, and he told, this is my system, my didactic school, and I write now my work. The same made Martini with Padre Paolucci. Padre Paolucci write very interesting footnotes about German keyboard fugue by Bach, Händel, about Rameau, about Scarlatti. And there is a distinction between the instrumental style from the... So, in the partimento is an instrumental... The partimento for solo keyboard is an instrumental style. So we have to use hands and not voices, because the vocal contrapunto rules of Zallino are different from what happens in Frescobaldi e Ricercate, because to sing a leap, a sixth ascending leap, is very difficult to sing, not to play. So after what happens? They started to play it, and then it became common also in the concertante solo vocal style to be like an instrument violin. No? And the rules change. What is the history of composition of music? Is how to tell? Is to become always is a history of the dissolution of rules that become increasingly less rigid. No? You understand? And what I don't like, for example, of the Rameau, this is very difficult to explain, but of the Rameau theory's consequences in the composition. Maybe I tell false things, is my opinion, but the use always less rigid of the fourth sixth chord is a consequence of a vision after which the inversion of the triad becomes the second inversion It's the fourth. So in the Romantic, in the 19th century, we have always more and more used without preparation of the fourth, sixth, for example. This became maybe is only a fashion, only a new develop of. But the Rameau is the second degree of the octave rule. In some very late harmony treatises, I didn't study the degrees harmony because my professor let me bassi continui to write accompanying above and chorals to write under the voices. And then, of course, we did a Fuchs contrapunto. So the figures, the basso continuo system, is a very fast way to think still contrapuntally. The Rameau system, Martini didn't accept. Also Bach. Of course, the lessons to in Austria was a little bit different because the Padova influences the Mozart lessons to Etude, General Bassübungen. They explain the inversion of the chords, but then Mozart used, I think, composed not. This is only explication of the basis. There is a triad, there are inversions, but I tell always, joking, that a 5 chord is the opposite of a 6 chord. The only common thing is the third. So, but it's a little bit like men and the women. No? So if I on a C I play 5 or I play 6, I play. Then you can think that the 6 is inversion, the first inversion of the A minor. But this has nothing to do with improvisation. And when I compose in my modern for me, but because I'm a Bach fan, but I'm not modern for my avant-garde or post-avant-garde colleagues. I'm a baroque composer when I play I write madrigals or prelude and fugues in a more modern idiom, that is this post Stravinsky, Shostakovich, Satie, Debussy, Ravel language, jazz, that are the same. Jazz is this. Jazz is Bartok, is Fauré, is Debussy, is Satie, Ravel, in Gershwin. No? In this, there is a free use of dissonance. Free use of dissonance, the center, the functions of Riemann, the tonic function, subdominant, dominant function, these are anymore present. You have to hidden a sense of functionality, no? Also in the modality, neo-modal, neo-tonal music. And this is very interesting because this creates a change of horizon. But I think always to numbers from the bass. Really, I don't know. Maybe I think you can speak about quartal harmony, of tertial harmonies. I have this very nice book of Persichetti, Vincent Persichetti, the harmony of in the translation. Of course, he thinks always like inversions, no, from a fundamental base, and for me, it's sometimes also a little bit difficult to understand. But in my hands, what happens? Normally, my compositions came from my hands. From the last, I'm writing a cycle of Lieder in Neo-Latin, on Neo-Latin verses, and most are written recording improvisation and rewriting my improvisation, correcting, elaborating. But you think to the interval from the bass, like in the Zarlino contrapunto, like in the contrapunto of Fuchs, like in the contrapunto of Durante, of Leo, of Padre Martini, of Bach, of Kirchhoff, of Panseron. Panseron explains the inversions, explains the degrees. For example, why the question of the 5/6 on the subdominant. In the French system, modern system of harmony, they see a 7 chord on the second degree in the first inversion. No? And this is, of course, logical, mathematical. But Hugo Riemann in the functional harmony is much more interesting because it tells that the function, the sense, is of subdominant with an added 6. So it's not a second degree, it's a fourth degree. And this is much more near to the continual mentality, no? My students, I taught many years harpsichord in basso continuo, also in the Bergamo Conservatory, and so the six ajouté of Rameau, of course, is I think that the analysis system is analytical, but the predominance of analysis on practice after the avant-garde and the new composition systems is the reason why people today, I don't know, but in European conservatories, there are the harmony classes in group, and they write on paper a chord harmonization, no? Or a bass harmonization. They don't stay at the keyboard to learn from fingers the movements, no? And so improvisation is this, to imitate and to have formulas in the also for Rameau, that was an excellent harpsichord player and opera composer, and there is the continuo system in his written music. Rameau wanted to found a theoretical system, and this had many consequences on the history of musical theories, but not so much in the practical musicianship. I think. And then there was a fusion between. But when there is a predominance of the analytical system, we have lost all the practical attitude. Jazz players are still able to improvise. Most of classical pianists not.
No.
Why? Because they didn't study Panseron. They didn't study the classes of practical harmony at the keyboard. That in Italy, in Italian conservatories of 19th century, there were 3 names normally: partimento, the class, or numerica, so figuring, numbering, or accompagnamento. So this was not, I think also in the Sanguinetti book, Art of Partimento, there are quotations about the very strong reactions of Italian teachers, maestri, against the penetration of the French harmonical system in the didactical world, music world, so in the conservatory. And why? Because this is really something of philosophical and not of practical. So when you can also make theories of kitchen, of cuisine, but then you have to produce the bread, to produce pasta, to produce, and the musician make the same. No? Are practical artists. They are normally not very deep intellectual. They are artists. They create beauty with the sound, and then there are also the intellectual of music, of course. But Bach was not an intellectual of music. This idea, modern idea, that Bach is the Pythagorean, is completely false. Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, in another famous document, tell me and my father, as every real musician, are very far from the arid, the dry demonstrations of the mathematicians in music. And this is against Rameau, of course, and against the theorists. Many treatises were written by not excellent musicians. This is a very important point. We know, but the most of music treatises, there are exceptions. Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, Turk is an incredible musician, I think. Coquelin. But for example, Di Ruta is for us keyboard players incredible, of fundamental important. But he was not Merulo. He was a student of Merulo. But Merulo is the genius, no? And Merulo has not time, didn't want to write treatises because he was much stronger in the practice, and tells Carl Philipp in this, we are distant from mathematical demonstrations, but much more strong in practical music. So this is very important, and this is the difference between the French post-Rameau. Is not Rameau. I love Rameau, really. It's not a Rameau problem. It's a consequence of didactic theoretical theory after Rameau. French is very systematical. No? France is very systematical. The approach of French mentality in every discipline is rationalist, enlightenment, and very, and these they are also in the figuring of continuo. They use one system. Germans use more systems because sometimes they are French influenced, sometimes are Italian. Italy has not reused. We were strong in practice, but there were many differences. So the Naples and Bologna school are the same, of course, the same moment, the same language. There were public conservatories in Naples. There were church conservatories, private monasteries in Bologna. No, but this is much different, of course. And the practical musicians in Naples were opera composers. Durante not, but other, yes, of course. And in Bologna there was Padre Martini, but before Martini there was Francesco Passarini. It was maybe one of my relatives. Yes, really. And but there was Saratelli. Yes, my grandmother is Passarini, and came from a brother of him. But a Franciscan again, and but I'm Lutheran. They were Franciscan, but there was a tradition of singing Bernacchi. There was Saratelli in Venice. There were Ristori was born in Vienna, I discovered, but maybe studied in the Bologna school. We don't know how, where. I didn't find documents, but he wrote for Vivaldi, the first Vivaldi opera, when he was 19, and then he went to as organist of the Polish chapel in Dresden, in Warsaw, in Moscow, and so and he used a system. The Ristori partimentos are beautiful. There is a mixture of language between Naples, because he was also in Naples for some period to write operas, and maybe was guest of Porpora, I think, or in any case of a famous Naples chapelmaster, and there is an influence between the Naples keyboard idiom, the Venice Vivaldi concerto style, the Bologna continuo tradition, that is the same language. One of the fruits of Bologna school is Corelli, for example. The trio style is Corelli style. The partimento in Bologna remains in three voices. In principle, the Corelli way. Handel was very influenced by Corelli, of course. Locatelli, Geminiani, Veracini. Corelli was like Petrarca in poetry, no? A little bit. And this is a product of the Bologna school. So, but the difference between Bologna and Naples, there are not difference. There are not differences in general. The difference is with Bach system, that there is a less systematical partimento approach with the Lutheran cantus firmus choral. So the chant donné, cantus datus, canto dato. So you have to harmonize, you have to write a continuo under the choral. And then you build after the two inner parts, alto and tenor. You have the choral, you write a bass with figures, and then you can create a 3+1 or 2+2, a choral scoring, no, the position, and but this the different Bach approach. That there is importance of cantus firmus of Volkslieder. This is very important. But in principle, Bologna and Naples are similar. But Naples we have concertante part of partimentos. In Bologna, no. So there are little things, and the languages, there are harmonies in Naples are more favored. Bologna is a little bit more conservative, more church style, because it was a school of priests. Naples not. No? So there are. So we can listen now. Martini.
Yeah, let's
in
maybe
trio. In trio, this C major always from the same manuscript, HH36 in Bologna, is really without figures, only one flat or one sharp, something like that. And but it's a Corelli style bass, completely a basso passeggiato, so a walking bass. And I decided to play this like an organ andante, like an elevation, a little bit in Martini style, but always with a little bit a Bachian flavor. And I had no figure, and I could do what I preferred. And sometimes my Bach influence is, of course, evident.